Good morning to all of you. We have three panel discussions and we'll have to keep it interesting. We certainly have a luminary of panelists, but I have promised them that I will be a bit provocative with each of them given the topic. So here we go. But before that, roughly the format, I'll probably speak for 2-3 minutes and then I will pass on the baton to each of them. They will give their introductory comments on the topic, maybe about 5 to 7 minutes each. Then I will probably ask a few cross questions and then we can open it up to the audience. I know that we have to close by about 11 o'clock, so let's get going. First of all, leadership in a world that is VUCA. In case any of you today do not know what VUCA means, it is like a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Ambiguous world. Now, if you do a kind of a synthesis, analysis of what all has been talked about in terms of what leadership means in this VUCA world, then these are 10 things that usually come up. Adaptability, resilience, vision and clarity, decisiveness, empathy and emotional intelligence, collaboration and team building, innovation and creativity, continuous learning and growth, risk management and anticipation, and communication skills. Find anything interesting about this 10? Everything, right? Yeah. It's like everything. You're right. And the other thing is, but if you imagine a world which is, I don't know what it calls when it is not VUCA. Is it like non-VUCA, less VUCA? I don't know. But think about it. This would have been true even 10, 15 years ago. Right? When would you say that a leader doesn't need to be decisive, doesn't need to be collaborative and team building? We have been talking about it for all of these stuff, right? So that's point number one. And I think these are open questions. And maybe when we listen to the leaders, the practitioners, they may be able to throw some light. They might be saying that there are degrees about it, right? Somebody might say how risk management was probably not so much important at that point of time, but today it has become very important. But the fact is, this is definitely an open question in my mind that, has something been very different when we are talking about this VUCA world? And that brings me to my interesting topic about leadership itself. Now, I don't know whether you have ever gone and searched about leadership as a topic. This is something that has been extensively studied and written about. Just to give you some evidence there, number of books in Amazon on leadership actually is greater than 100,000. And this is like not just greater than 100,000. They stopped counting. There are as many number of books. But I checked with ChatGPT and the fellow told me that there are too many of them. Don't even ask such a silly question. Number of books on Amazon arrived in the last 90 days on leadership, 10,000. This is just 90 days. Number of books of Amazon on Amazon arrived in last 30 days, 3,000. Number of books on Amazon on leadership and VUCA, 300. Okay, so enough has been already told about it, at least from a rating perspective. Now, we academicians also look at something called Google Scholar, where they publish papers. This also includes books, so the number that I show would be a superset maybe of all the books that I talked about. Now, the same kind of questions I asked in Google Scholar, number of articles on leadership, 53 million. This is like ever, right? So yeah, you can expect a very big number, but 53 million. Since 2019, 830,000. Since 2022, 154,000. Since 2023, 89,200 journal articles in Google Scholar. Remember, these are peer-reviewed articles. These are like serious stuff, right? So in the last 7 or 8 months, really serious stuff about leadership has been written 89,200 times. Tells you something about the topic. Leadership and VUCA. Since all, if you put it together, 22,100 in Google Scholar. But if you just look at each of the years, I was looking at 19, 20, 21, 22, you will find that about 3,000 articles on leadership and VUCA coming out every year, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we are talking about. So my think is that leadership is extensively studied and written about, and yet possibly least understood. And here is a hypothesis. Very often, if not always, we use success as a proxy for great leadership. So what I'm putting you in front of you and of the panelists is that we actually have no clue what leadership is about. Right? Anybody who is successful, we say, is a great leader. Alexander the Great, very successful conqueror, killed people, and then he becomes a fantastic leader, a great general. Several books have been written about them, lovely books to read, definitely. What about this guy? Terrible leader, right? Why? Because India did very poorly in that World Cup. We lost first match, then we finally in a critical match, I think we lost to Bangladesh first, then we went and lost in a critical match to Sri Lanka. My guess is if we had won that match against Sri Lanka, Rahul Dravid probably would have been a great leader, right? But on that day, we had to crash out of the World Cup. Very poor leader, right? Now, anybody who knows Rahul Dravid will vouch on the fact that this is a perfect gentleman they have ever met. We know what a great player he is. But nobody will have the guts to go and say that he's a great leader simply because India didn't win. That's what are we talking about? Performance determines how good a leader you are. What about this? I don't know whether I can call him gentleman, but what about this man? Next year, if he becomes president, whose chances are very high today, if you look at the popularity figures, I think he will go down as one of the best leaders America ever had. Right? Because, you know, he came to power, then he lost very narrowly, and according to him, it was a botched-up election, and then he proved his mettle by coming back again. So here is the deal. If success in VUCA world is driven by chance and randomness, because that's what a lot of it is talked about, it's very uncertain, etc., so there's a lot of chance and randomness, what implication does it have for leadership really? Especially keep in mind that we don't seem to be having a lot of idea about leadership. But this is an academician's point of view, and you know we can get away by just asking some of the provocative questions. So I hope that the distinguished panelists will be able to throw some light on that. All right. So with that background, I invite, maybe I'll go with Shiva to just take the stage, and you can talk from there also about your view about the topic. Our topic is leadership in this new world.
Thank you, Saurabh. So, I think we live in a predictive world. Predictably unpredictable world. We know that there are a lot of random events happening, and we know that the implication of random events, especially on corporate world, is pretty significant these days. But this has been the case forever, I guess. So, VUCA, as we call it, or unpredictability, chaos, all of this has been on for years. I mean, if you look at the opening lines of Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, it starts with, it's best of times, it's worst of times. In an age of wisdom, it's an age of foolishness, epoch of belief, epoch of incredulity. So he talks of a time during French Revolution. So even the social setup then was, full of uncertainties. So that has been around, but what is different? It is the impact of all of this. So unpredictable, who knew 30 days back, there was an issue, there could have been an issue in Israel. But the problem is, what are the fallout of some of these? So I'll give you, one example from the business that I lead. I run a company which exports apparel globally. 90% of what we produce goes to US and Europe. 3% of what we produce goes to China. So when during COVID, when China shut down, had a brutal lockdown, it really didn't impact us because that was hardly a market for us. But it impacted us significantly. Initially, a lot of raw material, supply chain got impacted. Raw materials wouldn't come from there. We finally worked with them and with alternate sources. We fixed the raw material. And what happened? China started opening up the manufacturing sector, but kept the markets shut. Now, China produces 30% for the world. Now, this entire manufacturing of China started catering, a lot of China produces for China. So that started attacking the rest of the world and started dropping prices pretty significantly. So we had brand new competition, and that too crazy competition with no, link to pricing, etc. So there was a new stuff. A COVID shutdown of the markets in China, which was an insignificant market for us, impacted our business pretty significantly. And this goes on and on and on, right? I mean, high interest rates. Even the student loan, program which was shut down, the waiver was stayed by the Supreme Court in US, had an impact because suddenly the retail demand got impacted on account of higher payouts. So there are, events which has got fallouts which in turn impact business. And as business leaders, one needs to take all of this in stride. And this will keep coming at us at a pretty high frequency. So what does that mean for somebody who is leading an organization or running a large organization? I think, I feel that at a leadership level, some of the characteristics that you need to not just survive but thrive in today's world is you need to be an entrepreneurial leader. I almost feel that one should be an activist kind of a leader, have to have a point of view and start going aggressively after that. One should be passionate about what one does. I also feel that one should have a fairly strong, passion for employee relations as much as customer relations. So your employees are one who are delivering the goods to the customers. So you have to focus inward as well as outwards, and so on and so forth. So let me take one of them, like the entrepreneurial part. I think it's cliche if I say that the leader has to be entrepreneurial. I mean, that's probably understood. There are a lot of people who own businesses and run their businesses. But what is important is how deep you drive down the entrepreneurial streak or DNA into the organization. So it's not just enough for the leader to be entrepreneurial, especially in an uncertain world. You need to have the people, within the organization also, become entrepreneurial. So you have to drive down risk-taking, make the organization more risk-tolerant, so that we pave the way for a lot of people at different levels to rise up to the occasion and come up with a unique solution or an action plan or a project to counter some of the events. When our business got shut down for COVID, we immediately pivoted to making personal protective equipments for the healthcare sector. We didn't have raw material. We found ways to fly in fabric for that PPE equipment from wherever, because trucks were not flying and so on and so forth. So people rose up to the occasion, took some big risks, and developed markets, and we kind of responded to all of that within a week. Now, the role of a leader in an organization is to embed this kind of entrepreneurial DNA deep down. That, I think, is what is expected. We live in a world where we cannot make a perfect plan. The environment around us keeps changing. So we have to take this imperfect plan that we have and then make it work in execution. And that is what is, that is what calls for improvisation. That is what calls for people to rise up to the occasion and then deliver given the set of changed circumstances. I believe that, if we are able to embed this in an organization will be fairly, VUCA proof or chaos proof, and will be probably best placed to respond to the situation. I'll pause here and let others speak.
I'll just have a small follow-up question, Shiva. That's very interesting that you are saying that you have to embed entrepreneurship much deeper down in an organization, which is probably not something that you would be doing maybe 20 years ago, right? Can you tell us a very specific policy or activity that you are doing, that you have undertaken to do this in your organization?
Sure. So you know, a lot is about communication, right? People have to believe that they are empowered and empowered to be entrepreneurial. So you know, we need to have people. We need to have a lot of secondary, tertiary leaders within the organization selected in a way that they have this streak in them. So you know, your selection of people has to be accordingly, and B, you have to constantly communicate to them that, you know, take risks, and I'm tolerant of risk. Also be clear that, you know, some of those decisions can fail, and be completely accepting of that. So you know, you have to walk the talk. You have to constantly communicate and make sure that people understand that taking risks is okay. That brings out this response from them.
Hello everyone. First of all, a big congratulations for this 50th year of IIM. You know, it's great fun to be here. You know, every time I come here, like, remember all the key mantras that were like doled out, okay, in capsules to us. That's still useful, okay, when you face a VUCA situation. Dealing with change, we know, like, Saurav just talked, you know, it's been talked about for many, many years, but the speed at which change is happening and the compounding of change that happens and the time that you have to deal with it, that's what is changing, I believe. Okay, so very rapid changes and coming from different places. So the senses that you have on the ground to feel like how soon this change is, you know, going to come and land on us. So that's the key change. So in the context of Samsung, if I can explain, you know, to have this change as a basic value in the company, it's not something as a leadership trait only, it's defined as one of the core value. It's part of the DNA of the company. And how it came, there's a story behind it. So when change is not forced upon you by the environment, right? Like, you change yourself by sensing the environment. That's the difference. Not when it is forced upon you. So what happened was, like, in Korea, Samsung had been like world #1, like Korea #1 for like many, many years. And then chairman, you know, with all the luxury and the money that you have, you travel to US. And you go to US, you go to Best Buy, and then you see, like, you look for Samsung products around. And then the salesman is like just trying to avoid selling Samsung product to you, okay? Because it's kept, you know, on the lower shelf or the back side, because he just doesn't want you to buy a Samsung product. And it's the Samsung chairman walking in there. He's figuring out, like, what's the problem? Like, why doesn't he want to sell a Samsung product to me? And then he figures out it's the problem of the quality. The quality needed in US is very, very different from the quality that was accepted in Korea. So after understanding that, the two, like, how you drive change in organization, like, so very dramatic changes he did. One was, like, bring all the executives who are in charge of quality of products in one, like, theater like this, open air theater like this, put a heap of Samsung products in front of them. He just burnt all of those products till they turn into ashes. And like for 6-7 years, all of these people who are in charge of quality are looking at, like, their creations getting, you know, turned into ashes, okay? They would never build that kind of quality again. So there are these dramatic moments that were created to instill that basic quality in all the leadership, you know, deep inside. That change is very important. You know, you cannot keep doing what you did before. Second one is very famous in Samsung. It's called Frankfurt Declaration. So basically, all the executives were invited in Lila Kempinski in Munich, in Frankfurt. And then the declaration goes like this. That day he announces, like, from today, he says, change everything except your wife and children. Okay, this is a legend in Samsung. Okay, every time we are not changing enough, people quote this. Are you changing everything except your wife and children? Okay, that's the level of change that you need to go deep inside. Otherwise, usually, you know, we are very generous to ourselves. We tend to believe we are changing a lot. Okay, we are very generous to ourselves. We don't change enough. So we don't change input mix. We don't change the process or activity, anything. And we want the output to be very different, like very unique. Like, why would output change? No input mix change, no process change, and we want output to change because we just hope and pray that output will change. That won't happen. So there are many levers in our hands. So are we changing the process? Are we changing the structure? Are we changing the strategy, culture, product mix, partner? We have like hundreds of levers. Do we have a checklist of levers? Have I tried every lever so that the change, the impact that I want to create really happens? So that's the core thing in the company. Like there are checklists of things that have you actually changed any one of input mix? Have you changed any one of process or activities? If you have not, go change that and then see whether the change is happening. So to do that, I mean, there are two things. One is the change that is forced by the environment on us. But the bigger, I believe, after experiencing for many years, is the change that happens here, the inside of us. It's not about the environment. I have, as a leader, as a person, as an employee, after working for many years, there are these baggages that you carry. There are these limiting beliefs. There are these fears. There are these things that you need to deal with. So to address that, for example, recently with Saurav, I have created what we call a thought leadership program. It's addressing only this aspect. What are the limiting beliefs in employees because of which, change is, hard to come by. So all of these put together, plus of course, all the hygiene things that we saw on the slide will prepare us for the VUCA world, I guess. Thank you.
So quick follow-up question, Deepesh. I mean, you are saying that you are preparing a culture in the organization which is always ready for change. But how do you decide, what to change, which aspect to change? And I'm sure that there will always be something which you will probably not change. What kind of decisions do you take based on that?
So like I said, there is a checklist of levers that every leader has. There's a bouquet of things. It's like your golf kit, okay? You cannot keep playing 7-iron all the time, right? You need to use, every iron that you have in your, golf bag. So that's why it's important that the leaders are given, these are your levers that you need to apply for these situations. And then situations always expect, so this is a term that was even described in Fortune magazine about Samsung. It said perpetual crisis machine. So that always there is a philosophy that, what could go wrong, what new changes could come in, what could be a great opportunity that we are missing. So there's always a sensing arm of Samsung that's continuously looking at, what's likely to change in next 3 to 5 years, and am I prepared? Do I have the right levers? Do I have the right partnerships? Do I have the right product? Do I have the right business model to deal with it? So I think many of you sitting here, you would be surprised that all your electronics, automobile, everything that depends on the semiconductors, frankly, you are depending on just 2 companies in the world, right? Either TSMC or Samsung. If they don't make it, basically you don't get your lifestyle improvement. And then behind these 2 companies, uniquely, there is one company in Netherlands. It's called ASML. Basically, they just do this lithographic tool. Just one company in the world, okay? If they don't make it, none of us get the latest, technology gadgets that we all enjoy using. So just one company in the world. So understanding that the dependency is so high on that company, whether you build a great partnership or whether you be an investor or whether you start preparing your parallel solution. So that sensing in advance is what keeps us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, big thanks to Professor Hrishikesh Krishnan, Professor Saurav and IIM AA for having me here. It's a great privilege and honor to be part of this Golden Jubilee celebrations of my beloved institute. And it is doubly sweet because this is also my personal Golden Jubilee, born in 1973. So I thought I'll kind of probably talk about my own professional journey very briefly to kind of articulate my thoughts on what corporate leadership must be in the VUCA world. The first 7 years I was in a R&D setup like Samsung's, but more on the IT services side, churning out proofs of concepts and all the leading edge technologies, experimenting with that, etc. Right? Second 7 years was more closer to clients, consulting for them, delivering technology projects, probably not understanding the clear impact of those programs on their business. Then, of course, IIMB EPGP happened. I always say this is the best thing that has happened in my life, next only to my wife. just to ensure that VUCA doesn't happen at home. Next 7 years, was more of the sales function, as most of us kind of, once you graduate from the institute, you want to do something very different. So it's all about, doing business development, kind of understanding the market, developing new clients, and so on and so forth. The current 7 years was more of, managing a P&L, driving teams, and of course, it's a two-way street, as I always call. You deliver value to your clients and at the same time create value for your own enterprise. So this journey of mine, I think, resulted in understanding the leadership from multiple dimensions. When you work in an R&D organization versus a sales organization or managing a P&L, the leadership traits or the requirements are very different in my view. So with that context, what I have learned is across 3 dimensions. In terms of corporate leadership. The first one is, I think in this VUCA world especially, we need to have the courage and to admit that I don't know, right? That is a fact of the matter. I think we don't know. If you kind of go in a direction believing that you know and go towards a solution, it's not going to work. So hence, I would want to kind of, while we are all extremely intelligent, I would want to kind of play down on my own IQ, right? And admit and always kind of have a doubt. There is this famous physicist I kind of admire, a guy called Carlo Rovelli. He always says, doubt, right? Always doubt. So even if you have all the confidence, it's not to kind of say that, don't have confidence, but have some doubt and have the courage to say that I don't know. On a lighter note, I don't know if Professor Vasanthi is there in this audience or not, but she introduced a weightage for class participation for the first EPGP batch, and it was absolutely chaotic because we all wanted to prove to her that we all knew, right? And that was the first and last time the class participation had some weightage. The second thing is, once you, when you say don't know, you have a tremendous amount of opportunities to know. The second is to have the self-awareness to find out avenues to get out of that situation, right? So that's where you take your best bet. Of course, you have a team, you kind of come to a conclusion, yeah, this is the direction to go towards, and that action has to be very, very decisive in a very time-bound fashion. We all understand that. But take a call with all the data points at that point in time, you move ahead. But the key learning for me is, after the decision is made and some results come out, you don't regret the action that you took. Okay, never regret. It's not about, finger pointing. And that's where I believe, there has to be an enhancement to your own emotional quotient. The EQ part of it comes into play. You don't want to regret any decisions that you take, in the professional world, especially in a VUCA world. That brings me to the third aspect, where, you have to kind of create a slightly different mindset given all these things happening. I can give you a few examples, especially, during COVID, 2020, I still remember, it was all about, first of all, the safety and, health of our employees and their near and dear ones. At the same time, how do we kind of balance the act of, ensuring that the client deliverables are met? And there are enough stories, how did we kind of, suddenly pivot to all this remote working, getting all the, infrastructure done so that the clients and the clients' customers are not impacted. But come 2021, it was a different world altogether. Suddenly there was a huge technology spend, and the next 2 years were, we were all kind of having a fantastic returns. And then come 2023 with all the geopolitical situation, etc., kind of things are, perhaps kind of grounded. So in this kind of a very volatile world, I think you got to have what I call as a little bit of a spiritual quotient. Okay, what goes up must come down. It's not to kind of take away the performance aspects of it. You got to really kind of drive a vision and drive hope in your teams to ensure that you work towards a common goal. But at the same time, I think if things don't happen the way you intended to be, it's okay. I think you've got to have that spiritual quotient in yourself and also spread that within your the next level leadership team perhaps. So to me, the summary of this entire thing, my learning is that the world is going to be VUCA and more VUCA. But inside you, within you, you must not be VUCA, right? I think that is the biggest, I think in a way, I think it's kind of elaborating what Deepesh just now talked about. I think as an individual, if you are not volatile, if you are not, ambiguous in your own thinking, if there is clarity of thought, I think you can address any kind of challenges that come our way. COVID, something else, geopolitical challenges, etc. I think this is the very, very fundamental to corporate leadership for us to overcome the situation.
So Anand, the question for you would be that, I mean, this is your personal journey, right? When you said that courage to admit that I don't know, which is about humility, which Rishi was also talked about in the morning. Do not regret past decision. You are saying that it's not only EQ, but enhance yourself to a spiritual state where you should not have this disturbance and VUCA within yourself. My question to you is that, as a leader, how do you embed this in your organization? I mean, do you do something very specific to have at least your next line of leaders and subsequently even below that for people to adopt this or embrace this philosophy?
Absolutely. There is no structured approach to this, Saurav. But in a way, I think what Shiva also mentioned, allow them to have that space, right? Allow them to take the risks, and you don't, if there is a failure, I think you need to kind of take it in your stride. The moment you kind of act as a leader to say that, okay, it's okay. I think as long as we knew that the impact of the failure is going to be this much, and you have a perspective in terms of what to expect, I think we are okay. I think if that characteristic or if that expectation of yours is kind of enacted upon in a couple of instances, I think the next level leadership start getting that confidence that, hey, you know what, this is what is the culture of the organization and this is what is expected, and it is okay if I fail. I think that's, I do it by action. I don't think there is any structured way to, implant that in their heads, Saurav.
Thank you very much. And yeah, so thank you, Professor Rishi. Thank you, IIMBA, for inviting me here. It's a real privilege for me to be here on this Saturday. My first strategy session was taken by Professor Rishi, so I'm really humbled to be sitting on the stage in front of him and speaking about the VUCA word. So, no, for sure, I think the best part being last in the panel is all the important things are said, so you can just simply write on what has been said earlier. So I'll do exactly the same. But before, my apologies, my throat is not fully well. I think first we need to understand, okay, what we see VUCA, what are the big things that creates our word VUCA around this time, be it recent, past, present, or future. So I would categorize three things. One is definitely the geopolitical challenges or geopolitical nature that we see. There are wars happening around us. There are things which are being said, for example, in the Munich Security Council 2 years back, that we have to disrupt China. So Europe and US, they openly said, now the narrative is changing from we have to disrupt China, that we have to de-risk against China. So there are clear, you can say, directions which are being laid down by certain geographies that we have to move in that direction. So that is definitely having a business impact. The second thing which I would, which makes the world very uncertain is technological disruptions that we are seeing. So we are seeing AI coming up. We all know ChatGPT, or we see, okay, all the vehicles we talk about, vehicles are going to be electric. So I think technological disruptions, they are not new. They are happening every 10 years. But I think now the way they are happening, they are still, they are changing the way of us doing the business, or they are also disrupting many businesses around us. And the third, which I see, which was the biggest disruption, which taught us many things, was the COVID, which happened a few years back. The supply chains was completely disrupted. The way of working, all of us were working from home. How do we bring the same level of productivity while we are working from home, and when the supply chains are not working, how do we support our customers? At the same time, the demand for electronics and other things grown multiple folds because everybody wanted to work from home. So I just categorize. Of course, there are other things, but these are the three broad things that I see around this time, which are making this word, I would say, VUCA. What I see is the biggest counter against this is collaboration. Collaboration is the key word. Collaboration with your partners, with your competitors, with your customers, with the ecosystem, even the startups. I have 20,000 R&D engineers which are very smart, building best-in-class technologies for automotive, industrial, IoT. At the same time, I think what gives me sleepless nights is what is happening in the startup industry. So every year we are running programs, or at least to engage with the startups. Okay, what are you guys inventing? So I think one is that how can we collaborate with the startups in every ecosystem, be it in India ecosystem, be it in Europe or US. So I think every region has their own nuances, and the startups are finding solutions for their specific region, and we need to tap into all these startups. Second thing is, I think governments are playing a very key role around these things. So especially if I talk about Indian government, they are showing a lot of ambitions in areas of semiconductor. They are bringing a lot of money. If you talk about US CHIPS Act, $50 billion, Europe bringing similar amount of money, India bringing $10-20 billion of money on the table. Companies, please come, set up the manufacturing, set up these things. So at this moment, we are very effective in the whole supply chain. So there are things, for example, if you talk about, so the wafers are kind of manufactured in Japan. So they are shipped to TSMC, as Mr. Dipesh said. The Samsungs and the TSMCs are only the manufacturers, assembled in Taiwan, in Malaysia, and then shipped to the whole world, also China. So we had a very efficient supply chain. But with this government's kind of putting a stake, I want to have a manufacturing on my side. Are we becoming more efficient? The answer is no. But at the same time, these are the things that we are trying to do to make sure that we are not, these geopolitical things are not disrupting ourselves. So in this, I think the collaboration is the key. Collaboration with your partners, with even your competition. So one of the thing like, so of course not to counter against Samsung and TSMC, but in Europe, we are setting up a factory which is in collaboration with Infineon, Bosch, and my company NXP, which is put by TSMC. And the money is coming from the European government, so 70% funding from Europe. Similarly, I'd say we are building a company called Scalar, which is RISC-V Scalar. So this is a new technology, right? So we are all dependent on ARM and other technologies to build our chips. So how do we create a consortium of an open source? Open source is not successful if everybody comes with their own solution. So how do we collaborate to standardize an open source? And that's where we are coming with the Scalar. We are working with Infineon, Qualcomm, say, okay, this is a consortium. So I would call it collaboration is the key. Also, a word we should anticipate more. I think you, Professor, you put 10 commandments very nicely. For me, anticipation and collaboration, these are the key words if I sum it up.
Hitesh, you talked about several kinds of collaboration, and one thing which I guess might also be discussed in our third panel is the startups and the collaboration with startups. There is a counter version which I'm also hearing from many employees of organizations, that our leadership has almost given up on the internal organization. I mean, they are so open to taking ideas from wacko startups, but when we come up with an internal idea, it just gets lost in a bureaucracy. So how do you balance that, in the sense that I'm sure that there are very interesting ideas which might be bubbling through in your own organization, especially the large ones, and then there are all these beautiful experiments that are happening outside your organization through the startup ecosystem. Anything about how to balance these two?
So fantastic. I think why I'm still very passionate about startup, because they come with the solution. When we do certain things inside the company, right, do we have that level of investment inside the company that we have a complete solution? So we have certain things, for example, we have a long-term, you can say LTI programs, where we set up, say, certain amount of money, say $100 million, to be invested on the long-term program. That is run by the CTO. So we get, every year we invite, okay, give us ideas, what you want to innovate from our own technocrats. and they gave us, for example, say 300 ideas. Out of that, we can only choose, because we have ability to fund only say 50. So we have 300 ideas, we are picking up only 50 where we can innovate, and those people are not, so they are allowed to work only on the long-term innovation kind of topics. So they are not working on the regular topics, so anybody can come from my 20,000 population, say, okay, this is my innovation idea, I would like to work on it, the CTO will fund it, and that person will work for next 2 to 3 years on that topic. So these opportunities we are creating, but at the same time, I'm still very, very passionate about startup, because they come with ideas which are market proof. They have studied the market, right? They have seen the market, they have seen the solution. Sometimes they don't have that level of technological depth, but I think the ideas are really fantastic. So I think that's where, even in these kind of LTA programs, I even bring startups. Okay, come work with us, startups, you will get the money on this topic. So I think these are the things that we are trying to do to balance these both internal and external innovation.
Fantastic. So I think 4 key things I'm getting from each one of you. You know, Shiva talked about embedding entrepreneurship at every level of the organization. Dipesh talks about change management, but he goes one step further by saying that be ready always in terms of thinking what can actually go wrong, right? And that's the second level that he talks about. Anand came and took us through his internal journey and saying that how do you deal with, you know, have this humility, not regret, spiritual quotient, and then how do you deal with that with the rest of the organization. And now you, Hitesh, have talked about collaboration extensively with the external world, and also how do I balance that with entrepreneurship, right? So these are the 4 things that we talked about. So I would now like to, we have about 9 minutes, so open it up to the audience for asking questions. If one of you can pass on the mic. Professor Vasanti, you just walked in. Somebody was remembering your CP in your class. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh. Sure. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Sachin Gaud. I am also an alum of IIMB, EGMP 58. So, to me personally, leadership is also, other than the traits which have been mentioned in the slide, are 3 I's. I in the sense, I as inspire, or maybe I as influence, or maybe I as invest, actually. So, my open question to everyone is, what do they do to practice such I's in their organization? How do they inspire or influence or maybe invest in future or whatever?
Hello. You know, these are things which you have to practice every day, right? Leadership is not about just one event or what you do. I think these are values that you have to live through, right? So when I was talking about entrepreneurial leader or an activist kind of a leader or whatever, I think all of these are embedded in it. You have to influence your people. You have to inspire your people. And you know, so a lot of this happens by walking the talk, right? I mean, what you do is watched, what you do is observed, and obviously it is followed. So you have to, you know, be living, you know, you have to be living that value in the organization. Second is a lot of communication, you know, and across the level. It's not enough that you communicate to your subordinates and their subordinates, you know, 2 levels, 3 levels, but practically all level. You know, you have to go right down to the front line and communicate. You have to go talk to people who interact with the customers, talk to them, see, you know, what their challenges are, and, you know, try to work. I think if you do that, I think the rest of the organization, rest of the, you know, various leaders who are doing their bits also will start doing a lot of that. That's how I think you, you know, embed all of this in the organization. It's a lot of hard work. There's no one formula or, you know, one memo will never do the trick.
Yeah, this question is particularly for the Samsung. Dipesh, Mr. Dipesh, sir. Sorry to pick you up, but I was just inspired by what you spoke. So the one of the major VUCA situation the entire world faced was this COVID situation. recently. So how did you feel that the change, you just said that without any input or process change, we cannot feel or get an output change. So how quickly the organization adapted for the change, because it is a big hit for all of us personally and professionally, and some lost jobs, and whoever remained in the organization were not very comfortable continuing what they are doing, and everybody was in a doubtful situation how it will lead further, because we never found any vaccine initially. So how quickly was it adapted? How quickly was a change made in terms of your organization? How do you see? And if any other situation, similar situation, VUCA situation occurs further, do you think the same template can be used and the change can be done very quickly? Is there a possibility out of this learning that it would be very quick and adaptable?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I will repeat what I said earlier, like either you have to change input mix or the process. Otherwise, don't just pray that output will change by itself. Right? So that's what I said. So especially that change in process was like ingrained in the system, that if such a big change is coming, some processes have to change. Otherwise, the output is not going to change, right? So that is what helped, I think, to run through this crisis. Of course, there are incidents that, in supply chain we did like this, in work from home we did like that, in marketing we did this way, people were allowed. But those are just, small instances of that great philosophy that you change your structure, you change your people, you change your process. So especially for COVID, just before COVID, I think Sachin worked with us, right? So he knows, just before COVID, if you ask any Samsung employee in the world, will there be work from home in Samsung? The answer would be not for another 50 years, okay? Not for another 50 years. That's the mindset of the organization, that we all come together, collaborate, work together. That's how the work gets done. Come COVID, 3 days, not 50 years. In 3 days, entire Samsung, 200,000 employees started working from home, okay? That's the speed with which change was adopted, because the company was ready, okay? Culturally, we are not ready, but process-wise, we are ready. If it comes to that, we can get it done. So that's what helped. I think many such examples are there, but due to time shortage, I'll explain it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, this is Himanshu. I'm from EGMP 39 batch. And my question is also directed towards Dipesh. Actually, what intrigued me is when you said about the change, you said you have a, the bouquet of levers which we have to change to get the different output. So I'm really curious to know, is what process governs the creation of these levers, as well as the revision or, revisit those changes, modify them? Is it a trigger-based modification, or is it some frequency-based modification? I mean, really interested to understand the entire process which governs creation of such, change levers.
Fully agree. It's basically accumulated experience. That's why Samsung tries to be in the same business. It's not like if I have money, I can do every business in the world. Even if you have money, you better stick to your business, and that accumulated experience helps you to build that list, like what works, what does not, and keep improving. But in my experience, the hardest thing to change is the people, okay? So that's the last decision you will take. But usually the biggest impact comes when you change the people. So the biggest impact is the one that usually you take the last decision. That does not happen in Samsung. We usually take the people decision first, actually.
Is there a committee which governs, because it's a big thing, right?
HD will take it outside. Okay, yeah. For the benefit, I mean, keeping an eye on the time, we will close the discussion now. So thanks a lot, and it's our alumni, so it's so much of a pride to listen to them and to realize, the kind of very important work that they are doing as industry leaders. So thanks once again, Anand, Hitesh, Dipesh, and Siva. It was a pleasure having you here and listening to you. And I'm sure that many of them would love to even talk to you during the break and take those discussions further. So I hand this over to the organizers.
That was really an insightful discussion. I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished panelists and Professor Saurabh. Now I would like to request Honorable Director Sir to join us in the stage and to facilitate our esteemed panelists and moderator.